The Blu-ray and DVD sales are going to be phenomenal for it, like the previous Blu-ray and DVD releases were. There was so much merchandise released for it: posters, T-shirts, board games. Documentaries were put together for it in anticipation for theatrical releases on movie networks. I saw a few of them. I really do think Twilight is an original film that is never going to be duplicated. You've heard the phrase time and time again: often imitated but never duplicated, and Twilight is definitely an original that there's only going to be one of. You're going to see many versions of the film. There's going to be in total 5 versions of this film. By the time the series wraps up, everyone's emotional that the last Twilight's coming out around June of 2012. But I really like the idea of how the Twilight thing was broken up into 2 different parts. The final installment was broken up into 2 movies, because now you have something to look forward to 6 months down the road, rather than having Breaking Dawn served up to you in its entirety back in November. So I really think that gives the Twilight fans even more reason to be more excited for the finale of the show. I know the actors were very emotional about it. They have a number of different film projects coming up. One person actually even had their entire back tattooed of the stars of Twilight. And I know Taylor Lautner actually wanted to meet this fan because of her devotion to the Twilight thing. I don't know if I'd go as far as to have, the WWE logo patronized on my back or anything. I'm a hardcore fan of, sports, but I wouldn't go that far. That's huge. It just goes to show how much of an influence things like Twilight and probably even the Vampire Diaries have had on its fan base. I'd love to attend a meet and greet with the stars of the Vampire Diaries or even the Twilight Saga, because it would just be overwhelming to me to actually see in person how out of control some of these fans can be. I know there have been a lot of reviews of the Vampire Diaries posted on internet forums. There have been a lot of articles written about it. There have been a number of different press releases released by the CW in reference to the whole Vampire Diaries thing. The success of this show has been absolutely overwhelming. There have been countless interviews done by the stars on radio shows and television programs promoting it. There have been a number of guest stars. It seems like this show has gotten over and has gone above the expectations and beyond the expectations of anybody. And I think the writers definitely deserve a tremendous amount of credit for what they have put together and collaborated for this thing. An award-winning show that I see going anywhere from 6 to 8 seasons. I'm rating it 8 out of 10 stars on a 10-star scale, taking 2 stars off because of the confusion I found myself in the first season when I was watching a couple of the episodes. The pilot episode was a good introduction to the show. It really explained a lot of things. It explained why Elena was, so distraught and so depressed over the fact that she was involved in a car accident, lost both her parents, and survived when she was in the back seat. They delayed the unveiling of Stefan's secret of being a vampire a bit too much. A lot of confusion, but a lot of explanation in the same light. They explained a fair bit in the first one. We knew right off the bat he was a vampire. We didn't anticipate this secret being unveiled, and we weren't all in shock because we knew prior to Elena that this guy was a vampire and had a history of over 150 years behind him of being one. So a lot of, confusion came to me because, how long they put off the unveiling of the vampire thing. I think we were 7 or 8 shows in before we found out, the connection between Elena and Stefan. And I really like the idea of how the show actually continued off of the previous installment, and they recapped in every show, right from the beginning of the series, the pilot, right through to the show you were about to see. They didn't leave anything out. And if you missed the Vampire Diaries, they spun it constantly on different networks throughout the week. So, is a reason why I'm taking 2 stars off, because of the confusion I found myself in. By episode 3, it wasn't too hard to follow, but I found myself a bit confused. By episode 3, I had most of the concepts down pat. I understood most of it. I understood the connection between Damon and Caroline. Caroline was a bit depressed because she couldn't find anybody for herself. Then she comes across Damon. Damon uses her to do his dirty work, so to speak, through mind manipulation and control. I understood the concept of that pretty quick. What I didn't understand was how she found out he was a vampire before Elena ever found out Stefan was. There's a lot of stuff in this show that confused me, but a lot of stuff was great too. The explanation behind a lot of it so early in the show was phenomenal. You weren't left hanging, I'll tell you that. You were left hanging because you were wondering what was going to happen the week after on the most recent one that you were about to see. But you weren't left hanging in terms of explanation. You knew everything because the explanation behind the show was absolutely phenomenal. Although I was confused because I'm not a big fan of these series dealing with vampires and the whole relationship thing. But ironically enough, I find myself watching it for some reason. I say I'm not a big fan of it, but I've seen seasons 1 through 3 already. So I guess I'm, stealing my own words out of my own mouth there. I'm not criticizing these vampire dramas by any means. I think they're phenomenal. I think that's what every fan of vampires, wants to see. And I think that Twilight was the first to do it. Twilight's definitely an original. And I think that everything else is kind of like a spin-off of it. They definitely reference Twilight a lot. Even in Fright Night, I mentioned the fact that they reference Twilight quite a bit. And in the Vampire Diaries, there's no exception. They reference that one quite a lot. So, ultimately I think that things like the Vampire Diaries and Fright Night, even the remake from the 1985 version that we saw about 25 years ago, I think is a spin-off of this whole Twilight thing, and that's the unfortunate thing, because there are similarities between the Vampire Diaries and the Twilight thing. The relationship saga between Bella and Edward and Elena and Stefan, very similar in a lot of ways. Different tales of what a vampire is supposed to be is different, but the storyline is considerably different, with a few similarities here and there. So there are similarities between Twilight and the whole Vampire Diaries thing, but because of what the show details and what Twilight details, Twilight and the Vampire Diaries have become phenomenal success stories, and seemingly they've done it overnight. It's unfortunate, though, the Vampire Diaries doesn't have a book based on it, because the book, I'm telling you, would be a phenomenal book and would probably be a bestseller, kind of like how Twilight is a bestseller. The Breaking Dawn book, over 1,000 pages. If you've read it, great for you. I am a firm believer that books are better than the movies and the series we see, and I've always been a firm believer that books are, better than what we see on television or theatrically released. There will never be a movie that will be better than a book. Even The Notebook by Nicholas Sparks, the actual novel, ultimately was better than the theatrical release. Bridget Jones's Diary was ultimately better than the theatrical release. The Harry Potter books, ultimately better than the theatrical releases, and I think there were 7 to 8 releases of that film theatrically. So, nothing theatrically released has ever been better than books. And I am a firm believer that books, in the Twilight Saga's case, are ultimately better than any movie we've seen on the big screen. Movies were long because they tried to jam-pack so much detail into a 2-hour and 15-minute presentation. But with how much detail that was included, they didn't really nail it with the theatrical release. I think ultimately what we're seeing here is the movie becoming popular because the book was a huge success and a New York Times bestseller, for Christ's sake. It's not because the movie was a success. It was because you read the book and you went to see the movie because you read the book and you loved the book. And I think that if there was a book released on the Vampire Diaries, the book would be ultimately better than the series we're seeing portrayed each week on the CW. I think, if it wasn't for shows like SmackDown and the Vampire Diaries, the CW network would have never came to be. There's nothing really on the CW network, only a few key shows that's making it survive. And the Vampire Diaries is definitely one that is a key show that's making it survive. And if that show ever goes off air after its 6th or 8th season is wrapped up, the CW is going to find itself in a critical position of, folding and going off air, because it's not going to be able to compete with some of the networks we're seeing come out in 2012. Follow me on Twitter at HEW Entertainment, Jonathan Clarke 1. Join the conversation at Facebook.com, Jonathan Clarke. If you have an opinion on the Vampire Diaries, I'd love to hear your stories about the Vampire Diaries. How crazy of a fan are you about this stuff? What have you done that has been absolutely outrageous? If you have an outrageous story, tell me what it is. Because I'm sure there are a lot of fans who have done a lot of outrageous things when it comes to the Vampire Diaries and Twilight and everything. And I often ask the fans for crazy, outrageous stories because I love hearing them. I find myself becoming very amused over a lot of these stories, and I've heard a lot of stories about a lot of crazy things over the last 13 years that I've been running this website and producing this show for our audio archives and our YouTube channel, and it's amazing. You know, some of the stuff I've been able to share with all of you, and I've heard some of the most crazy things. So I'm asking you, what are some outrageous things that you've done? If you have some outrageous stories about things like Twilight and the Vampire Diaries, let me know, and I'll probably end up sharing it here on our show. You can also call our automated voice answering service through Snapvine, found on one of our official MySpace pages. I believe the address for it is myspace.com/HEW Entertainment, the official MySpace of HEW Entertainment. You can also tell us what it is through a recording and let us know what you think. You can also email it to us, hewwrestling@hotmail.com, and my personal email address, jonathanclarke2005@hotmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at HEW Entertainment, Jonathan Clarke 1, and join the conversation at Facebook.com, Jonathan Clarke. I've got some music lined up for you on the way. I think you're going to like this one. It's Izzy and Solo, a song that was actually featured on the Disney Sing It PlayStation 3 Xbox 360 video game. Very successful song by him. He has released songs like Pretty Girls in the past, and I think you're going to like this one. Solo is coming up for you right now here on HEW Entertainment Variety Radio. More of the Vampire Diaries is coming up next.
Well, I done know it's your boy IY80 alongside the man JR. I said I don't want to walk this earth if I gotta do it solo. Yeah, we used to be a team, running the streets, yeah, we was living out our dream. Oh, you used to be my brother, I was your provider, and now we separated in two. Oh, and we was burning up the block, yeah, and everybody knew when we stepped in the spot. Oh, see, we was like the dynamic duo. Oh, I never thought that you'd go, but you did, yeah, you did. Oh, and baby, you left and sailed away alone, yeah, alone. And now you got me trapped up on this island where nowhere to get home. And I don't wanna go, I don't wanna go, I don't want it, no, I don't want it, no. I don't want to walk this earth if I gotta do it solo. Cause I was so high and now I'm so low, and I don't wanna walk around alone solo. I said I don't want to walk this earth if I gotta do it solo. Put the feet onto my top line, put us together and yeah, I feel it the rewind. See, you give me a purpose, now I'm getting nervous that my heart will never sing again. Oh, when